welcome to our webinar, How to Design Studies and Get Quality Data with Dr. Simon Jones. I'm just going to give you all a few minutes to join. And as we do that, I'll talk through a bit about what we're going to do today. So today's webinar will consist of around 30-minute presentation by my colleague Simon, but then we'll have time for Q&A, so keep track of your questions. If you look on your screen, you should see a little chat icon, and as you join, we'd love to know your name, what you research, and where in the world you're joining from. So let's start using that chat if we can. That's also where we will use for the Q&A at the end of the session. Now, as you're adding your comments to the chat, I will give a little bit of a background of Prolific for any new joiners here. Prolific allows you to easily find the participants you need for your research. If you've joined or you signed up for this and you're already a Prolific user, you'll know all about this, no doubt. But for anyone who's new, we have over 150 active participants. That is users who have signed up or signed on in the last 30 days. So they've been in their Prolific participant account in the last 30 days. These active participants are from more than 40 different countries. They speak more than 80 languages, and we have over 300 filters to help you find the very specific participants that you need for your research. And I know that is a lot, but don't worry, in just a moment, Simon will walk you through how to find the right audience for you. Prolific is used by companies across the academic, market research, and AI industries. So I want to see you in the chat. Let us know which industry you fit into, which company you're coming from, what you're researching. No matter what you're researching, you can always rely on Prolific's participants, and Simon will get into more of that in just a second. So I'll pass over in a moment to my colleague Simon, but as a little introduction, Simon is a senior research consultant on Prolific's client research services team, where he helps clients design and deliver complex, high-quality research projects on the Prolific platform. He specializes in turning ambitious research ideas into well-designed studies that generate robust, trustworthy data. Before he joined Prolific, Simon worked as an associate professor in computer science at the University of Bath, where he also completed his PhD in human-computer interaction. Now, alongside his academic background, he's worked in research consultancy and market research, bringing together expertise from academia, industry, and applied research practice. Today, he'll be sharing his insights on how to design studies and get quality data with Prolific. It is also Simon's first webinar with Prolific, so go easy on him. He's doing me a favor here and doing all of you a favor here because he's incredibly knowledgeable and he's going to share all of his knowledge with you now. I will pass over to you now, Simon.
Great, thank you, Sabrina, and thanks so much for joining, everyone. I'm really excited to jump into today's session. So we're going to explore what it really takes to collect trustworthy human data. We'll start by unpacking what data quality actually means and then look at how to find participants who truly reflect the audience you want to understand as researchers. From there, I'll show you how thoughtful study design can stop poor quality responses before they ever reach your data set. And we'll take a look at some of Prolific's newest features that help to verify participant authenticity. And I'll share a few study design tweaks you can use to make sure every data point comes from a real engaged person. And finally, we'll talk about why creating a great participant experience isn't just nice to have, it's a key to richer, more reliable insights. So by the end, you'll have a clear picture of how to get the kind of high quality data you can truly trust and how Prolific can make that process easier for you. So I'm going to be talking about data quality a lot throughout this session, but what does that really mean? It's not a universal standard. What counts as high quality depends entirely on what you're trying to achieve. For some studies, the priority might be comprehension, so making sure that your participants fully understand complex stimuli or instructions. For others, it might be naivety, finding participants who haven't seen similar tasks before, so their responses are fresh and unbiased. Almost always, it's about honesty, and reliability. So ensuring participants give consistent answers across time and conditions. And it could also be about things like attrition rates, so keeping participants engaged so they complete multi-part or longitudinal studies. And there are various other dimensions of data quality that might matter to you. Often you'll care about many of these at once. Quality isn't a single dimension. It's a balance of those factors you choose to prioritize based on your research goals. So at Prolific, we care deeply about all of these things. We have dedicated teams working constantly in this space, improving our tools and our participant checks to meet the needs of researchers, as well as the evolving threats and challenges that come with modern online research. So ultimately, it's about data you can trust from real humans who are who they say they are, who understand and pay attention to your task, who are taking your study for the right reasons, and who are giving you genuine, thoughtful responses. But as many of us know, there are still ongoing concerns about the reliability and quality of data collected through online platforms. So researchers have raised issues like inattentiveness, overexposure to common tasks, and now, more recently, AI-generated responses. And that's why it's so important to choose a platform that gives you tools to combat these problems and to design your studies in ways that helps to prevent these kind of issues. So if you want to maximize data quality, we need to start with the foundation of every study, the people who are providing the data. And so that brings us to our first big question. As we build confidence in our overall study design, how do we make sure we're getting the right participants? So many of you will already be familiar with Prolific's set of participant filters. We have over 300 ways to target people based on their demographics, experiences, education, attitudes, beliefs, and many more. So these filters let you go beyond broad categories and find a mix of people who are relevant for your research. If you're newer to Prolific or not sure how to narrow your target audience, we have a new feature called Audience Finder, which can help you to get started. So Audience Finder helps you define your target audience clearly. It gives you an interactive AI-powered view of who's available on the Prolific platform and shows you in real time how many participants fit your criteria and how you can refine your sample. So rather than having to select filters one by one, you can simply type a natural language query and Audience Finder will surface the matching participants in real time. So let me show you what that looks like in practice. Well, imagine we're setting up a study from the very beginning. So starting with defining our audience. Then once we've chosen our sample, we'll start to build on additional layers of study design and good practice. So in this case, let's imagine that we're looking to find participants to take our survey, and we need people who work in large organizations and have experience of using ChatGPT. So once I've entered that query into the Audience Finder, it's going to compare that search against all of the filters on Prolific and find the best possible match in terms of searching through the 150,000 plus participants we have in our pool. Here you can see it's found 17,000 participants, and this is based on filters of company size and those who've indicated that they use ChatGPT. So from here, I can go ahead and create a study that automatically applies these filters and pre-screens participants based on the information they've already provided to Prolific. So we've got a starting point. We have an initial audience that we can potentially distribute a survey or a study to. But we may want to refine that further as we develop our study. But how do we know if these are going to be the really great participants that are going to give us rich, honest, and useful data for our survey? So before a participant ever reaches your study, there's a whole series of identity and behavior checks happening behind the scenes. So Prolific runs extensive verification processes to make sure that participants are genuine and trustworthy. When someone signs up, they have to verify key pieces of personal information to confirm their identity and eligibility to take part. We run technical checks looking at things like their IP address, their ISP, their device, their VPN use to ensure they are where they say they are and their connection is authentic. And then after participants are verified, they complete sets of ongoing checks before they can access real research. So quality is monitored continuously through things like ongoing liveness checks, attention checks, researcher feedback from those using Prolific, and submission reviews. So if a participant fails any of these checks or behaves suspiciously, their account may be suspended. And when you're designing your own study, you can add another layer of quality control by applying additional filters at the study level. So criteria that determine who can take part in your study that can help to filter out potential bad actors or people who are going to give you poor quality data. So these kind of filters can include things like approval rate, which shows how often a participant's submissions have been approved by other researchers. So for example, you might set a minimum of 99% approval to ensure you're working with consistently reliable participants. And Prolific already sets the bar really high. So once a participant's approval rating drops below about 96%, it's quite unlikely that they'll remain on the platform, but you have that option to set that bar even higher within your study. We have filters for things like number of submissions, which reflects participants' level of experience with online studies. Some researchers might prefer experienced participants with hundreds of completions, while others may want newer participants who bring a more naive perspective. Task experience, this is a new filter that we've recently added, which captures familiarity with different kinds of research activities. So for example, whether someone has completed writing tasks before, data labeling work, or certain kinds of studies and experiments. And we're constantly expanding the set of labels that describe task experience. And then there's things like language fluency, which ensures that participants can understand instructions and express themselves clearly throughout your study. So together, these checks, both at the platform level and at the study level, help you to reach participants who are real, attentive, and well suited to your research. So let's take a look at applying some of these additional screeners ourselves. Among the list of popular screeners, you'll see a category called Participation on Prolific. And in here, I can select that approval rating and indicate that I only want participants that have an approval rating of 99% to take my study. If I want, I can also go in and specify a minimum and maximum number of previous submissions. But in this case, I'm thinking that my survey about ChatGPT usage is going to involve a lot of open text writing questions. So I want people who have successfully submitted writing tasks in the past. And I can say anyone who has done 10 or more writing tasks should be able to take part. Now with those screeners, I've narrowed the pool down from that initial 17,000 people to 6,500 of the most trusted and relevant people. So we're getting closer to being able to launch our survey to this particular audience. Now, the people that I'm finding will be eligible for the study based on the information that they've already shared with Prolific. So they'll only see my study if they've already given relevant answers to those screening questions. One simple thing that you can do in your study is, which will help to improve data quality, is to double check that your participants are who they say they are. So are they giving consistent responses that match the information that they've given for Prolific screeners? And we encourage you to re-ask your most important screening questions within your survey or study itself. So this helps confirm that participants' pre-screening responses are still accurate and up to date, especially for criteria that might change over time. So you can imagine things like employment status or things like political views or views on particular topics might shift over time. And I'll walk through an example of building these kind of checks into a survey in a moment. But before we do that, let's imagine that actually we've decided we want to narrow our audience even further for this particular study. So say, for example, we don't just want people who are in large organizations who are using ChatGPT. We want to survey people who are using it really regularly, at least on a daily basis. So for this, we're tapping into a more niche audience. And Prolific's own screeners don't go that deep into frequency of use per AI model. So we want to add in a level of screening before participants complete our entire survey so we can screen them out if they're not frequent users. And this is pretty common for many researchers. You'll be studying a topic at a really deep level and likely want to narrow your audience to a particular niche. So one thing we want to do is avoid revealing too much information about our required screening criteria in the study description that's going to appear on Prolific. If you reveal to participants exactly what you're looking for, it can unintentionally encourage people to tailor their responses to qualify for the study, or keeping those details, by keeping those details private, it helps you to maintain authenticity and prevents self-selection bias in your study. So here's an example of a study description that reveals too much information about screening requirements. So at first glance, it might seem helpful to be really specific. We've told people here that we want ChatGPT users in large organizations who use it on a daily basis. But by listing that exact criteria you're targeting, we risk signaling to participants what kind of responses we're most interested in, and that can lead to some inauthentic responses or people misreporting their details to progress further through your study. So we can make this study description more broad. We can state that we're interested in AI use, not specifically ChatGPT. We can remove anything that signposts. We're looking for only those who say they use it on a daily basis when we present them with that question. And now if we present them with screening questions, they're less motivated to answer in a certain way and more likely to give us a genuine response. So let's head over to our survey tool. And in this example, I'm going to use Qualtrics and show you what this looks like with in-study screening. So here we are in our survey tool. We've set up our questions. And as I touched on a moment ago, these include repeating certain screening questions that have already been applied to filter our audience. In this case, we're re-asking about company size in case participants' answers have changed since they provided that information to Prolific. We're asking about AI usage in the workplace. So here again, we're reconfirming that they use certain AI models. And then here we're adding a deeper level of screening, specifically asking how frequently they use ChatGPT for work to find really frequent users, those that we want to survey. And then in a new block of questions, we have all of the main questions for our data collection. And in here, we have a mix of open text and multiple choice questions. And if we look in our survey flow, you'll see I've set up some branching after the first few demographic and in-study screening questions. And here I'm checking if participants have selected that their company size is 1,000 or more employees, if they're using ChatGPT for work, and how frequently they're using it. And if they give us the required answer to all three of these questions, we send them on a path that includes all of our main questions. If they don't give the required answer to all three of those questions, then they're not the right audience for us. And so we send them on a different path. In this case, we'll screen them out early and take them directly to the end of the survey before we answer our main questions. And then, so when we turn on custom screening in our setup on Prolific, it will create this special screened out completion path. So this means that we can now identify and filter for very specific participant attributes that aren't covered by existing Prolific screeners, all in one seamless flow. So with this, you can start to screen out participants fairly, paying them for their a small proportional amount of their time rather than the full study payment. So this gives us a simple, ethical way to reach highly targeted audience and maintain data quality by only gathering responses from the people we really care about reaching. So we can control our budget for how many people we can afford to screen out. And if we reach that number during data collection, the study will automatically pause so we don't overspend. So here I'm grabbing the screened out path, which will give a specific redirect URL and completion code that will send participants back to Prolific. And so we're going to copy that over. And then we're going to grab our default successful completion path for the entire survey, and we'll add that into the screened in completion redirect, and we're all set. So we're going to have two different kind of payment levels, one for those who get screened out because they don't give us the kind of responses that we're looking for, and those who can then go on to complete our entire survey. So at this point, we've found a relevant audience. We've applied extra filters to get the most experienced, most engaged, most approved of that audience. We've then set up further filters to narrow that audience to our specific niche. And now we can turn our attention to adding further defenses for potential bad actors or poor data quality. So, for example, we can think about people who might want to use external resources and tools like LLMs or online information to give their answers to our survey. So, as AI tools become more common, research is facing a real turning point now. It's easier than ever to provide responses that are not genuinely human. And that's why we've developed authenticity checks. This is a really effective and accurate way to help identify when participants might be using external tools instead of giving their own answers. So these checks use real-time behavioral signals. They look at things like interaction patterns to spot when a response doesn't seem authentic. And the system runs over 15 checks while a participant is answering survey questions and flags any suspicious behavior directly in your submissions page on Prolific. So when a response gets flagged, it's correct 98.7% of the time, and false positives are extremely rare. So you'll see each participant in your submissions page marked as either high, mixed, or low authenticity, which makes it easy to review and filter out questionable data. So these authenticity checks are now available at no extra cost and currently work with tools like Qualtrics, Gorilla's Questionnaire Builder, and Prolific's AI Task Builder, with more platforms coming in the future. And one quick tip in terms of best practice: simply reminding participants not to use AI tools in your study reduces LLM use by around 61%. So it's worth including that note in your study text, a really cheap, simple thing you can do to make a difference to how participants behave. So how do you add authenticity checks to your study? We've made this really easy. All you need to do is copy and paste a short code snippet into your survey. If you enter a URL that points to a compatible survey tool that's compatible with Authenticity Checker, you'll see this Authenticity Check section. And there you'll find a code snippet you'll need to copy. And there's also a button to press that tests the setup. So if I press that right now, that's going to show that the script is not found. So we're just going to hit copy on this script, and we'll take ourselves over to our survey in Qualtrics. And then in here, we're going to navigate to the look and feel and into the general section. And then we'll paste that script into the header field. So this is going to enable authenticity checks to run in the background of our Qualtrics survey. Then we can go ahead, we can save and publish our survey. And if we hit that check script button again on Prolific, this time we get a green tick and a success message confirming that authenticity checks are ready to run. So everything's set up to go. We can start our data collection and launch our study. That script will run in the background as participants complete those free text questions in our survey. Authenticity Checker is going to analyze in real time their behavioral patterns. No extra steps required from you or your participants to get that working. And then you'll see in your submissions, clear flags on your submissions page as responses come in. So either high, mixed, or low authenticity. Where authenticity is high, participants passed all of our behavior checks while filling in the survey. Those with mixed or low authenticity results failed some or all of these checks. So you can easily review or reject the affected responses, meaning you don't pay for these data points, and those spaces can be reallocated to other participants to provide reliable data. Another new data quality feature on Prolific is automatic rejection of exceptionally fast submissions. So this feature helps identify when participants complete a study much faster than expected, something that can often indicate low engagement or poor response quality, or something like an automated bot completing surveys at inhuman speed. So our system automatically flags these submissions with an icon on your submission page, so you can review them easily. You'll also see a short note explaining that these submissions are eligible for rejection, and you can choose to handle these manually or switch on auto reject, so the system will do that for you. So this is an efficient way to catch low quality responses and protect your data set. So we now have the right audience, the best participants possible. We've filtered them in with in-study screening. We've analysed them to make sure their behavioural fingerprints reflect genuine responses. How do we make sure they're really engaging with our survey and following all of our instructions carefully? So let's talk about attention checks. Attention checks are short, simple questions designed to confirm that participants are paying attention to your study instructions. So they're a quick way to measure whether someone is reading carefully and engaging with the task rather than just clicking through. And at Prolific, we work hard to maintain the quality of our pool, but we still encourage researchers to include a small number of checks in their study. They act as an extra line of defense, giving you confidence that your data reflect thoughtful, attentive responses in that moment that someone is actually answering your questions. So there are two main types of attention checks allowed on Prolific. The first are instructional manipulation checks. So for example, a statement says, please select agree for this question within the instructions. And these test whether someone has read the question properly. The second are nonsensical items, so questions with clearly incorrect statements, such as asking whether they agree with statements like, I swim across the Atlantic Ocean every day to get to work. So answers to these kind of questions help to identify participants who aren't reading or considering their answers. There are also a few best practices to keep in mind with attention checks. So always use clear and fair instructions. Attention checks should measure attentiveness and not try to deliberately trick participants. Try to integrate checks naturally into your survey so they reflect genuine engagement. They shouldn't be a test of memory or comprehension. So human working memory is limited, even for careful participants. And a common mistake is to give an instruction on page 1 of your survey, like remember to select strongly disagree later in your survey, and then test that 5 pages later. So that's a memory test rather than an attention check, and limited working memory is a natural human limitation, and it doesn't always reflect how well participants are paying attention or engaging in the moment. So we advise that information required to answer an attention check should be presented on the same page rather than relying on recall. You can follow Prolific's policy on attention checks. We provide lots of advice in our research help pages. And we advise to use them sparingly and transparently. 1 or 2 well-placed checks are typically enough to ensure data quality without frustrating attentive participants with endless attention checks that can also kind of inflate the length of your study. So I want to end with something simple but important, which is that a better participant experience generally leads to better quality data. So high quality research doesn't just come from good checks and filters. It comes from thoughtful design and consideration of the experience for the people taking part. So start by piloting and simplifying your study. Gather feedback from our participants and use our messaging features to engage with participants who are reporting issues or confusion in that pilot stage. And a short pilot helps you to spot confusing instructions or technical issues that can frustrate participants and affect the quality of their responses. Try to be really clear about what's involved so participants can make an informed choice before they start. So, for example, let them know if a study is going to require significant amounts of writing, and that transparency helps to set expectations and build trust. Be fair and respectful, so try not to penalise honest mistakes and use checks to support attentiveness, not to trick or catch people out. And of course, pay fairly. Fair pay increases motivation, the care that participants take, and ultimately the quality of the responses that they give. And try to keep your tasks engaging and manageable, so break out longer studies into shorter sections. Give people time to read and understand instructions and make it clear that they don't need to rush, and highlight key information so that they can succeed. So all of these features can help to increase the quality of your data set. If you notice data quality issues of concern, report them to us. We take these reports really seriously. We investigate them all and use them to keep improving the platform and the experience for researchers. and we can act on poor quality data so that you're not paying for it. There's a feature within the app which gives you a link to report any data quality issues directly to our team. And as I say, we follow up on all of those. So as I wrap up, I just want to highlight something which you may not be aware of, which is Prolific's Managed Services. This is our end-to-end research solution for teams who want expert support from study design to data delivery. Managed services are ideal for complex or high-stakes projects where you need methodological expertise and operational efficiency. So if you choose to work with our managed services team, you'll get expert research design and complete project management from start to finish. So you'll have a dedicated project manager handling every operational detail so that you can stay focused on research, analysis and insights. Our in-house team includes PhD level experts who can help design your study, refine your protocol, and make sure you've got that methodological rigor. We specialize in things like targeted surveys and longitudinal research. So for example, we can help you to build out a really engaged pool of participants with really high retention for longer, more complex studies that may involve repeated measures or more contact points over time. And we handle things like complex screening, custom sourcing of participants, and additional levels of participant verification to reach even the most specific audience. And you can choose a model that best fits your needs. So if you're running a specific project, for example, a one-time dataset collection, we'll design a tailored solution with clear deliverables and endpoints. If your needs are ongoing, our program model also offers a continuous partnership for things like longitudinal studies as well. And our process moves quickly. So from kickoff to data in just a few weeks, we start with collaborative design and then move through sourcing, testing, piloting, calibration, and building feedback and quality monitoring at every stage. So if you'd like to learn more or discuss an upcoming project, you can reach out to our managed services team directly through the Prolific website. I've included a link to our contact form there. Please feel free to drop me an email if you have any questions. But I'm happy to wrap up there and look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Simon. Now we are going to move into the Q&A session. We've had great chats going on already in the chat, so please add any more questions that you have. There's loads already, but we'll try and get to as many as we can answer today. And if you happen to miss anything during the webinar, I know that was full of information. Don't worry, we will send you a recording of the webinar sometime tomorrow, so look out for that in your email. Also in that email, we're offering a £100 credit to any new users who sign up and spend £25 with us. So you'll get details on how to redeem that and full T's and C's for that in the email as well. If you're already a registered user, which I suspect many of you are welcome to share that coupon link with a friend or a colleague who might be interested. Finally, we have had some great questions in the chat about regular participants and using Prolific for market research. And while we will answer those questions, I just wanted to let you all know that we do also work with a large number of market research partners, and our partnership team would be delighted to connect you with them. So drop us a message in the comments if you'd like to know more about our market research partners specifically, and we will send you an email about that. Now, onto the Q&A. Lots of questions in here. I'm just going to get them up and go chronologically. So, our first question was, can we contact participants before they enter their completion code for a study, or do they need to fully complete the study before we can contact them?
That is a good question. So our messaging system works on the basis that participants have to have interacted with your study in some way in order for you to message them. So participants can actually reach out to you during the study if they have questions. I will need to double check and follow up whether we can initiate messages live while they're in the study. And if you drop me an email, we can follow up on that point. But yeah, participants that have interacted with your study, you can message. We do prevent researchers from messaging anybody on the platform. They do have to have interacted with your study. But yeah, participants have a mechanism whenever they're taking a study to contact a researcher. So if they're partway through a longer study, they can drop you a message and you can respond to that message in real time if they're having any particular issues. That's also something that the managed services team will potentially take on if you're interested in that kind of service, kind of managing that communication with sort of large cohorts of participants as well.
Nice. Now we had a few questions about this. I'll just show one of them. This one is from Daniel, and it's basically a question about whether Prolific as a brand attracts participants that are more of an academic techie type rather than regular everyday people. As someone who has run a lot of studies on Prolific, I'm wondering if you could speak to that at all.
Yeah, sure. So we kind of carefully curate the overall participant pool so that we have kind of representativeness within our pool for all kinds of studies. And Prolific serves, you kind of mentioned it, market research, academic research, AI model creators, application developers, with like really diverse needs in terms of the audience. So yeah, we do have a wide spread of kind of participants we have on our platform. We do have built-in sampling techniques for representative samples, things like age, gender, ethnicity, political views all get taken into account. So if you're looking for that representativeness, that's something you can apply at the study level, but we do try to manage that at the pool level as well. Yeah.
Nice. We do have a question here which we'll have to follow up on via email, but I'll just show it, and then if anybody else wants to have this conversation, just drop a message in the chat and we'll also follow up with you via email. The question is from Ollie, and it asks, is capturing the IP address of participants permitted, and if so, are there GDPR guidelines I should be aware of? This is something that we've had a few times, but it does depend on a few different parameters. We'd want more clarity on like what tool you are using, what kind of IP you want to capture. So I did ask our team who works on this specifically while we were in the call, but they said basically they want to talk to you and get a little bit more clarity on that beforehand. So if anybody else is also wondering the same thing, just drop it in the chat and I'll make sure they follow up with you. The next question we have is a question about filtering. It basically asks, we want participants, in this case, with no hearing difficulties, but when we apply that filter, the available pool drops a lot. Is that because many participants haven't completed the hearing/health fields, so they're excluded by that filter?
So we have a mechanism in Prolific where we try to surface those kind of about you questions, which perhaps participants have completed less frequently. So if you are finding that there are particular filters, reach out to our team, and that's something that we can potentially try and surface for the pool of participants, that the kind of broader demographics that you might be looking for. The audience finder tools, the checks that we have give kind of real-time information about who's available in our pool. If you had more specific questions, the kind of custom screening approach that I've mentioned so far might be applicable for some kinds of questions. If you're finding that you're not finding the audience that you need, you can potentially kind of rephrase, expand those questions and include them in a broader pool. But the audience checker will give you the kind of the latest information in terms of specific questions like that. But talk to us about any challenges you're having finding participants. We have teams who work on participant acquisition and can potentially kind of work with you to make sure we're sourcing those participants. So if you're not finding what you need, we're very happy to work with you and find those participants.
Nice. Now we have a question on how someone can recruit participants and then send them to another platform. So this one specifically asks, can I recruit participants on Prolific and have them take the test on a different platform such as SciToolkit? This is someone who's running reaction time tests.
Yes. So one of the really nice things about Prolific is that we are compatible with lots of different tooling that you might use for data collection. So basic requirements for setting up a study are that you have a URL that you can point them to. I don't know the specifics about SciToolkit. We do have the feature to provide credentials to users. So if the tool that you're acquiring perhaps is behind a kind of login, you can set up credentials in advance and they will be allocated to participants as they arrive in your study. But anything with a URL that's used for data collection, we can send them participants to there. We have really deep integrations with some of the most used tools, so things like Qualtrics. We have a deep integration, so it's really simple to set up. Talk to us about SciToolkit. We can investigate. We have a page with information about all the tools that we support that we can follow up with a URL for you to take a look at as well.
Wonderful. We actually had another question which probably is answered there, which was, does this platform work with REDCap? I think probably same answer for that one. Rosemary has another question which is more about how the app works in particular. So if you're in a study, how do you change from a participant group that is attached to that study to a filtered screener set?
Yeah, so one of the things that a limitation kind of placed on studies is you're not able to make those changes live once a study is deployed. So if you've linked a study to a participant group, but you then want to remove that group and apply filters, there's a simple way to do that, which is to duplicate the study that you've created. That will copy all of the settings that you have, the URLs that you've set up, and then you can switch out the participant group to a set of filters. It does require you to either have the two studies running in parallel if you want to keep both data collections running, or you can pause that group study so that participants can no longer enter that study, duplicate, switch to filters, and then launch that study. And you can make sure that it will do this by default when you duplicate the study. It will exclude participants who've already taken the version that you've duplicated. So that way you don't get participants taking the study twice. But yeah, that duplication path would be how you can kind of essentially change the screening criteria on a study that you've already got set up.
Nice. Now, this question came through when we were having the presentation about authenticity check, and it asks, I am planning a study that uses different AI tools to test the quality. Is it possible to integrate that AI tool link or URL with multiple AI tool links and along with Qualtrics?
So just going to make sure I'm understanding that question correctly. It sounds like they want participants to be using AI tools. I think the kind of guidance here would be essentially, as long as you're providing kind of clear instructions to participants about having additional tools open in parallel and managing expectations about that it's in your study, it's okay to be using AI tools and feeding that into the responses they're giving in Qualtrics. The kind of standard policy on Prolific is that AI tools are not intended or not meant to be used whilst completing studies. However, if you're kind of upfront about that, often we kind of encourage having a bit of a sort of onboarding process in your survey if you've got more complex tools that you want participants to be using alongside the survey collection, data collection. In terms of technical integration with Qualtrics, I'm not too sure about that. If that's the kind of meaning behind your question, happy to pick that one up offline as well by email and follow up on that one.
Nice. And also on authenticity check, does authenticity check only work for free text questions?
Yes. So at the moment, however, authenticity check is growing and evolving continuously. So look out for updates on that. But at the moment, yeah, those sort of behavioral patterns are based on people entering text into survey open-ended text questions. Yeah.
Now we have more kind of technical, how we manage things in Prolific. A question about how one can change from US dollars to GBP in their account.
I think that one would probably be one to flag to support and for our kind of finance team to set up. if there are not directly settings to do that in your own workspace, it may be that it's kind of already locked in. If you've started data collection, that's something that our support team can help you with.
Nice. And Daniel asks, what is too long for a survey as a rule of thumb?
Good question. There is kind of no single answer. We have participants who quite researchers who are quite accustomed to kind of having quite long and involved surveys. I think many of the things I sort of touched on earlier around participant experience, sort of thinking about what that experience is like for a participant and in terms of their attention, their kind of fatigue. I would say like the typical range, the kind of just in terms of the kind of average is anything between 1 to kind of 50 minutes for a survey. But if it's engaging, if it's varied, if you are not putting pressure on participants to finish in an amount of time that it's difficult to get through that kind of length of survey, then participants generally can handle potentially quite long surveys, but we do advise, this is where piloting is really useful to kind of capture that feedback. And participants on Prolific are quite open about kind of sharing their experience. So, in the pilot, include a question at the end about how they found it. Check the kind of messaging feature for participants who will potentially report any issues or give you kind of indications about what the experience was like for them. But yeah, there's no hard and fast rule. Just kind of making sure you're not designing something which is too challenging for participants to get through.
Wonderful. We have a question that I think is for me. It just says, can we use it for a new project? I don't know if it is referring to the coupon that I mentioned. I'm basing this on how long ago the question was asked. So Rosemary, if it's referring to something else, let me know in the question. If it is about the coupon, it is only for new users. The way that it works is you have to go through the onboarding flow again in order to redeem it. Then we have a question from someone on longitudinal retention. They ask, is longitudinal retention available as a quality screener? We're doing a 3-wave survey and we want to minimize the number of respondents who tend to drop out or not be available later on.
Not something we have currently. Longitudinal studies is something that we are kind of actively working on, kind of expanding features. Explicitly kind of retention in longitudinal studies, not currently a feature, but very useful feedback. So thank you for sharing that. We do have kind of tips and tricks for increasing retention in longitudinal studies, and perhaps not time for me to go into those in too much detail now, but things like using the messaging feature, so building that pool, using that group messaging function, so setting expectations, keeping participants up to date on kind of where they are in that kind of larger project, if you need them engaged in a larger project. Carefully considered bonuses for retention, so people react psychologically. A bonus is quite motivating, so you might consider structuring your payments in a way that really incentivizes getting to a particular point and not churning during that period. But yeah, longitudinal studies is something we're actively working on, and we'll have more to share in the future.
Nice. We have another question about longitudinal studies, and this is a specific use case or example, I should say. We have a study that's 3 parts. A 10-minute pre-interview questionnaire, a 60-minute interview if selected, and an optional 20-minute follow-up. How can I set this up in Prolific when it seems like 44 minutes is the max time?
So 44 minutes shouldn't be the max time. Reach out to us if you're experiencing that. We certainly have studies that are longer than that. In terms of kind of how you would set that up, this is where the participant groups feature would be most useful. So if you've got that flow from one study to another, you want to be routing participants into a participant group that you can then use for messaging, publishing your second study, the follow-on studies. But yeah, we don't have a cap of 44-minute maximum. So if you're having any issues with that, reach out to us, and that's something we can help you with, walk you through.
Wonderful. I think the last question we have, if I'm reading through all of them right, and if I haven't asked your question, please drop it again in the chat. It does scoop me around as I am looking at different questions. Is from Rosemary. It's a follow-up question to the question about duplicating the study to switch from participant group to screener sets. So she asks, does the copied study also transfer the unused money?
So the copied study will draw from the same kind of budget that you're drawing from. By default, it will set the same number of places, the same payment rate. That's something that you can adjust. If you have a limited budget, one of the things you're going to want to do is to pause, let all participants finish that first study, and then hit stop on that study. That's then going to release any of your unused funds if you're only partially way through it, so that you've got sufficient budget to launch the follow-up, the second duplicated study. So yeah, if you've got the same study set up twice and both use your entire budget, you'll need to stop one of those, and that will release the funds for you to launch your second.
Great. We have another follow-up here, which is referring to the other question, which referred to the 44-minute cap. So they ask, can I set up my study as just one study, thinking of communicating on Prolific to schedule the interview time and use codes to show how many steps a participant has completed? Is this okay?
Yes, you can set up as one study. You can have different completion codes at the end. So you can set up a number of different completion paths within a study. So yeah, you can use completion codes to indicate which stage they're kind of coming through in your study. Just thinking about it, that 44 minutes, what you may have been seeing is that on studies, we do have like a timeout mechanism. So if participants go over time, there is a maximum time they can take to complete a study. So that may be something you've been seeing on our interface. But yeah, happy to go deep on that example as well if you want to reach out to us, and we can take a look.
Wonderful. I think that is all of our questions. Just waiting one more second. We did have one that was in the chat that never came through, which was whether or not we have a representative sample in Germany, which I know we do not. Not yet, at least. I think we have some German participants, but certainly they're not set up to be a representative sample. And that brings us, I think, to the end of our Q&A. Thank you all for your time today and for your participation. Don't forget to look out for your email tomorrow with the recording and that £100 coupon link for new users. And we hope to see you at another event very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.